When I was 16, I published that product, got around 150,000 views. I actually had a Notion doc, which I called gamifying, building an agency, and 26 overdraft saved my life a couple of times. I basically saw them turn 5,000 euros into 30,000 or something.
What is up, everyone? I'm your host, Chris, and you're listening to Nonlinear, the podcast in which we unpack these strategies, hacks, and decisions high-achieving young professionals use in 2023 plus to design careers they love. In this episode, I speak with my close friend Nick Raziborsky, who I got to know while we were running through Entrepreneur's last Berlin cohort a couple of months ago. And Nick is an outstanding person to listen to for any one of you who's into personal development, the future of work, building tech skills as a non-techie person, building agencies, bootstrapping businesses, or now even playing the VC game. In this episode, Nick shares with us his entire journey, which started in his mediocre school career, where he even had to repeat one class and leave his original school, how he then reprogrammed himself also through understanding that tech is his passion, and then leveling up, already having an own agency at 21, which was running super, super well. And now at 23, already making the move to SF. I'm ultra happy to have recorded this with Nick, although remote, and very happy to share it with you. Please enjoy the episode. Nick, welcome. Amazing to have you on this podcast.
Thanks, Chris, for having me. Yeah, excited for this.
Nick, where are you calling from?
I'm in San Francisco right now. I just took a bus from Richmond to the WeWork. I'm at the 2 Embarcadero Center one. Has a really nice view to look at the contrast, but yeah. Just touched down here on Tuesday night. Already fought the jet lag, so the weather's been great. So kind of was like LA weather, like in the 25 Celsius, like 80s Fahrenheit. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Took a couple bike rides around here and like just to soak it in. Right, it's still a bit surreal moving here, and of course, like as you know, there's this blocking thing of the O1, right? My visa, like, can I actually go live here, right? Am I attaching to something now that might slip out of my hands? Kind of like the little demon inside of your head yelling around. But so far it's been great to me, and I really enjoyed my first couple of days here. Yeah,
it's amazing. Nick, just for the audience, also, in what life phase are we catching you right now?
it's probably like the biggest transition period of my life so far. So like since I was like a little kid, since I was like 6, 7 years old, like I got fascinated by like all of this American culture and like all of the great branding and the great people that build stuff here. And consume content in like English, looked west always. And I basically I applied to universities here. I applied to Stanford back then, to MIT, like totally out of the blue. Studied for the SAT on my own and did all of this stuff, and always wanted to go here. But I knew that it's going to be hard, and I need to wait for the right moment in time. And yeah, I feel like now that time has finally come. Like all of the work is sort of paying off. I mean, it feels like achieving a goal, but in reality, you're just like starting fresh now. So like, I feel like now I'm only going to be in the actual game now. But as you might know, like I've been unbelievably grateful that I can like finally reasonably move over here, and like fingers crossed that everything goes well. But yeah, this is like a very, very interesting time. We're speaking now on like day 3 of me being in SF, and so like I've been here in the beginning of the year for 2 weeks. Was caught right in the flood. So I had like 2 people I knew here before, like one from the YC co-founder matching platform, and one that was like a very distant acquaintance. And I thought like, wow, maybe I can at least see like this one guy, Bernardo, is building like a employee compensation SaaS, really cool guy. Anyway, so thought I could meet him. He was on vacation, and so I arrived here on the 10th of January, like fired up, and I come like straight into the biggest flood ever in San Francisco, like one of the bigger ones. And now it's been much better. So
I mean, that's the real bottom up view of what's happening now, right? So straight from your brain and perception, maybe to get a take a couple of steps back or give an intro to you. So I think
Hmm?
you're still 23, right? When's your birthday, by the way?
Yeah, correct. November 6th. So,
Ah,
yeah, in 2 weeks now. Yeah.
yeah. So you're like one of the most impressive people I know and one of the most formative people for me in my last year. Maybe, probably even the most formative person. Shout out to Entrepreneur First here also.
Mm.
Um,
Thanks for the.
because they introed us. And so you basically have this entire you're only 23 again. Like many people who will listen to this are probably like in their late 20s, mid 20s, late 20s or older. So you're 23 again. You're a self-taught software engineer. You've gone to uni, but you basically quit university in like your fourth, fifth, sixth semester or something. You've had a company which generated significant revenue already when you were 21, and your mindset and your mind world is entirely different from the educational or my world, right? Which is basically my mind is formed by the educational system of our German, Parisian, and then also the French, and then also the American world. And so I'm just saying this because you're in a totally different reality and you have a total different story. And I think we can go as back as you'd like and just start out.
So yeah, I think I've always been a bit resistant to following instructions, and like I always wanted to figure stuff out on my own. Like that started with fucking Lego, right? Lego sets. Like I always wanted to not follow the instructions and like build it on my own. And then yeah, my teachers. I wasn't necessarily a favorite, so like I think I also have like a bit of ADHD. Like I'm coping with it pretty well, but during school it was yeah, I draw a bit too much attention, and yeah, so like I would say my school years weren't like the most happy-go-lucky, and yeah, I've basically always been like on the uh, what do you call it? Basically, not a teacher's favorite, right? Anyways, so yeah, school years. My parents motivated me with like buying Lego toys and stuff, and so I got through elementary school. Then went to like a gifted students class, which my dad signed me up for, and there I spent like 4 years. But I've always been a bit of the outcast because like everybody there was like very smart, but also like very diligent, and like coming from also like mostly an academic background. And so my parents, they never went to any like higher education. I think I'm the first one in my family to actually go to the German gymnasium. So that was new basically for them. And yeah, I struggled there a bit. So like yeah, school was a lot of struggling. Dropped like I actually had to repeat a year because my bads were so great. I failed in Latin, and then I repeated the year on a different school, and then also failed there. So like yeah, I would say up until age 14, 15, it looked like I really wasn't on a good track. And there was yeah, there was like massive doubt. I was thinking, or like my parents were thinking like, hey, should this guy just get like an apprenticeship, just like we did, right? And maybe were we wrong in the initial things we thought, and then something happened. Like I don't know what happened. Maybe puberty or something hit, or I don't know. And like a switch turned in my brain, and I was like, okay, you can either like resist the system, or you can just like swim along in it, right? And so yeah, I just started showing up again. Like I didn't skip 2 days out of 7 in school. Which my little brother is doing right now. So
Mm.
he's running the exact same strategy as I am, which I'm advising against. But yeah, he still needs to figure out on his own. Um, Dude, it's so funny. It's been so bad that I even had to go to a doctor to get like to get a full screening, like a because like I was pretending so hard to like not go to school. Anyways,
Wow.
so kind of had a turnaround there, and then yeah, I was at the second tier, so I actually dropped from the higher education gymnasium to the second one, Realschule, and was like, okay, fuck, I need to get out of here. I need to like get my life together again, and not to say anything bad about the people doing that. Um, and then I I basically had to learn French. Like the other schools, they had like 3, 4 years of French, and I had to learn all of that within like 9 months or something, or like 6 months. And then like to go back to the gymnasium without having to redo a year, basically, you have to have like a grade of 1.3 in like your entire grade. So like that seemed like really impossible. I was like, fuck you, I'm just gonna try it, right? I pulled up this legislation from like the Bavarian ministry side. Like I don't even know how I found it. I don't know. I went to my principal. I was like, I want to do this, right? And so I feel like those were like early signs that I was just gonna find like whatever loophole and like just go try it, do that kind of stuff. Did it. Watched like a shit ton of French movies, played Assassin's Creed in French, and did all of that stuff,
Played
and
what in
then made
French?
my way.
What did you play in French?
Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed.
Ah,
There was like a
yo.
there was
Yeah, I know Assassin's
there
Creed.
was a there was a yeah there was a French one. I think Assassin's Creed Unity was French, and I played that in French, and that actually helped really well. So, anyways, went on to there. I know this is like the long version,
At
but
what
yeah,
point
you
on
yeah, and then yeah, I went to high school again, did really well in school.
what age are we
And then
talking
I had,
about, by the way? Like how old were you then?
so age 15, roughly, age 15, 16. And then, yeah, I started doing well again in school and like really, pushed a lot. And I was on this upward trajectory, right? On this serendipitous spiral going up. And we talk about this a lot, like you and me, about like negative and positive feedback loops. And I feel like I was in a very positive feedback loop. I was working out 4 times a week. I was eating so clean, like I've never done in my life. Maybe now, but yeah, it's like no sweets, only protein shakes, and like really started seizing life in a way, right? And that felt really good. Meditated a lot back then, so I was a very I would say a very wise 16-year old, 17-year old. And yeah, I was so excited and on fire that I was like, dude, I'm just gonna try applying for these American universities. I'm just gonna apply to Stanford, apply to MIT. It's like a very long process. You have to write like pages and pages of applications. I had to do SAT tests, had to drive to Munich for like special tests. I had to study on my own for them and stuff. And did all of that. Unfortunately, didn't get in. They take very little international students there because I applied for the stipend.
How
Anyways,
high
but
did you
yeah,
score? How did you score?
1440, 1440. So that's like, I think it's like, it's a pretty good score. But if you want to get into Caltech or fucking MIT or something, you need like 1590. So I was like 98th percentile, but you have to be like top point oh 0.01, right? But yeah, I'm very glad I tried. I'm very glad I tried, and I even had interviews with some Stanford people, so that was really interesting. And it kind of also made me want it even more because I felt like, okay, like I was in the process already, so it wasn't like completely out of reach. It's like some things you maybe just like never try, and then you think like, oh, okay, that's not my path anyways. So that also like just strengthened the seed of like, hey, I want to go here, right? And yeah, I then moved to Munich to study. So I did like my A levels. I also did pretty well in them, and studied electrical engineering then in Munich. And yeah, by that time, maybe to give more context, by that time, I've been coding for like 4 years now. So like I started at the age of 14. Started out of a curiosity for hacking. So like I had this one friend who shared like a basically a toolkit to like remote control your friend's computer, right? And that like to a 14-year-old gamer, I was a really chubby gamer back then. That was like super exciting. And so like I crashed their games a lot. And then I noticed like, okay, this is getting picked up by the antivirus software. And so I basically copy pasted together my own like little Frankenstein software. And just like my first programming attempt was literally just like changing, like deleting the name of the author on the program and like writing my name there. It's like, yeah, this is mine
Mm,
now. I'm such a hacker. So that's what you call a script kiddie. I'm sure you heard of the term.
no.
And yeah, it's what you call script kiddies. Anyways, so got into coding and then like played around with that kind of stuff. for the first 1 or 2 years, and then also got into hardware and like electronics. So like I bought a soldering iron and like all of this hardware stuff, and I built like a little mini Game Boy, and like a little arpeggiator, if you know that. It's like a music device. I built all kinds of stuff. Anyways, and got into coding more and did it more for coding itself. So like by then I was like hooked by the age of 16, 17, and so what allowed me to go to Munich basically, and that's what I'm connecting again, was that
And maybe a quick question here, like, so when
sorry,
we
no,
now we basically have two stories. So story number one is like how you grew up and then how your academic career went, and then
yeah,
story number two is when you started coding. Like, what
yeah.
was the inflection point, by the way, in your academic career and the hacking career? Like, did you start once you were on your super low, or did you start once you were up spiraling again, or when did you?
Uh, so the stories are gonna interweave from now on, as you will find out. Like I haven't had like a very straight academic career. Um, but I think I started while I was still not doing that great in school. So it wasn't like a revelation and then I started coding. But I feel like the coding, like the fascination that I had with coding and I would say like the more dopaminergically beneficial activity of coding and like building something and doing something hard and like I feel like that also helped reset like my dopamine balance in a way and like my motivation levels from I'm gaming 14 hours per day to I can do hard work now, right? So I feel like this is sort of maybe related, right? But I started doing it just for the outcome. And so yeah, I started coding for the outcome. If somebody would have just sent me the final thing, I maybe would have never started it. But because it wasn't out there, I had to figure out how to get it, right? And that was my motivation to
How to get what?
learn, like to get like that undetected thing I could fuck with my friends' computers with, like
Yeah. Okay.
so.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, and then that was motivation enough to start learning coding, and then after like a while, I even had a break. Like I started with C sharp, which is like a bit of an easier programming language. And then I noticed I had to do C++ if I wanted to make it like really good and really undetected. And that is
Mm.
really like not the most ideal thing to like self-learn. It's like, um, it's like orders of magnitude more frustration than if you were like building something in Python right now in 2023 or like anything in 2023. So like it was really horrible. Like a lot of things would go wrong. It was super frustrating, and I feel like this experience of like getting hardened was also maybe beneficial, right? And I even dropped it for half a year. So like I stopped coding for half a year or like even longer, and said like fuck it, I'm not gonna do this. This is like so mind-numbingly like annoying. But yeah, anyways, got back to it, and then I would say like by the age of 16, 17, like I really started picking it up more. Yeah. So what I was doing basically, I was building all of this stuff on my own, right? And then I basically built this sophisticated piece of software where you could remote control another PC. Uh, this is like technically
And
you
this
call it
thing is very
malware.
dear to you,
Yeah.
right? Like, you should have released it. Isn't there like TeamViewer or something? Isn't there this German company even which is ultra big, like which is exactly doing this and offering this as a legal thing though, as a support, remote
Yeah, yeah,
support thing?
yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, like, I actually did release it. So the story was, I built it for myself, and then I had it lie around, and then, like one day, I just woke up from a night of partying, and I was bored, and I felt like, okay, what am I gonna do on my Sunday? And I always used my Sundays pretty productively, so I was working a lot, and I felt like, hey, this piece is just, like this thing is just lying around. Why don't I just open source it, right? And so like the this is also like a pretty pivotal thing basically in the career in my career, which basically started my career. The decision to say like, hey, I'm just gonna share the source code, like the blueprint of like how I built this, and which was a novel thing at that time. So there were no types of this software in C++, like open sourced in the way that I had it, right? And so like when I was 16 years old or something, I published that product, or even when I was 15 or something, 2015, 2016. And I recorded like 2 YouTube videos about it. posted it on Reddit and like did all of this promotion basically. And yeah, that project really took off. Like to date, like it got around 150,000 views by people, and it's like a niche thing, and like has 650 stars on GitHub, like a lot of downloads. There was even like 5 people that contributed to it, so they were like other people that were like contributing code to it, and I was reviewing it, and yeah, that was really cool. Anyways, but that basically kicked off my career, so might have been like the most important decision
Man, it's
there.
crazy. Just to quickly go in there.
Yeah.
This episode one, let's call it episode one of Nonlinear, the first around 10 episodes or something. Now, episode number 1 actually started with Ariel. You know Ariel, at least from my tellings, right? And Ariel also told us that like his entire like he just now raised a couple of millions again, right? The Series A or proper seed, I think, after this angel round. And he also says that his entire journey like kicked off 3 years ago, of course, like way later than your coding journey, but it kicked off with like releasing content and like releasing his thoughts to the thing. So I like this common thread is literally like you cannot not see it in all of these conversations.
100%. And I think like looking back now, I think the more, yeah, the most pivotal moments were like when you made a bold decision to like release something or to like go outside of what you're, I mean, it's classic, right? You go outside of your comfort zone, or like you also go outside of the people you know, like you apply for something new, right? So like EF, for example, is also something where you're like, okay, like I'm just gonna go quit everything and like go out there. And it's like also a bolder thing, right? And for me back then, doing a bold thing was meaning, hey, I'm gonna put myself out there for the very first time. I'm gonna record myself like in a YouTube video and like tell people about this thing. And I actually haven't done a lot of that for a long time. So yeah, this is actually something where I think, yeah, I should release more. Of course, like it's a time thing, right? But yeah, I had a lot of these thoughts in the beginning of this year, basically. But yeah, we're gonna come to that part.
Beginning of this year, yeah, exactly. I mean, now you're
Yeah,
running a different script in terms of strategy, right?
yeah, yeah,
So,
totally.
hey, I didn't want to interrupt you there. Still, I did. Where were we? You released the code, got
Yeah,
150,000 impressions on it.
yeah. Today, so like not back then. It was a little like less. It grew over time. So through this first project, my first employer basically found me, and during my A levels, or like right about my A levels, he kicked off the contract like right when I was in the hot phase of like preparing for my A levels. Um, I did my first paid work, and yeah, it was really crazy because like I think I something inside of me prompted me to negotiate pretty well there. I even got paid before I ever did any work. So like I would say like maybe I learned it from my dad or something. My dad is has been in sales like all his life, and I never like did classic sales like in a way of like focusing on sales. And I'm also like a in between like being an introvert and an extrovert, like I can switch a bit. But anyways, I think like something inside of me, like some sales motion kicked off, and I negotiated that I get paid to review his code. So like I was supposed to continue a project with like a bigger code base for my first client. And I told him like, hey, how do I know you're legit? I'm gonna spend all of this time like looking at your shit, and then you might even say like, hey, you're not on the job. And I told him like, yeah, just I don't know, wire me money so I so I can even look at it. And I got like my first, I think, 1,500 euros or something, just looking at this code. And I was like, wow, okay, this is actually legit. And of course, like I discovered Fire then, right? I had like a very good like proportional hourly rate. So like I think over the whole project, of like 6 weeks, I had like a if you calculate it through, I had an hourly rate of like 100 or something, which was like the very first money I ever made, I think, besides like selling something when I was in kindergarten. And so that of course got me hooked, and was like, okay, I can actually make a career out of this, right? Um, but back then I was still in the paradigm of thinking, okay, you need to have formal education. You ought to have formal education. And so I never thought like that I should just go straight into this, right? So I believe back then I saw the opportunity of like, hey, I could just start an agency here or like just freelance and like continue to make money. But yeah, I'm like a very curious person. So I also wanted to be in the sciences in a way, right? And so, yeah, that led me to
Okay, nice. So you're like basically 18, 19, you discovered fire. You almost drive around in a Lamborghini, I assume. And then,
mentally, yeah. I was actually configuring cars. Yeah.
really?
Yeah. No, not a Lamborghini. But I think what I liked at the time was I think a BMW Cabrio or something. And I already thought of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I moved to Munich to like go drive that distance with that new car and like impress my by then girlfriend. Um, yeah, so I discovered fire when I was like 17 and then could actually move to Munich because of that. And so I became independent like at a very young age. So like parents weren't doing like that amazingly well. So I paid my flat and stuff on my own. And moving to Munich, it was of course expensive turf. I paid like 1,040 euros per month for 30 square meters, which is
Mm,
pretty hefty. It's like,
wow.
um, but yeah, it was a cool flat. And I had a great time in Munich. Studied electrical engineering and picked that because I didn't just want to do regular computer science. Because especially in Germany, computer science is less applied and it's like more, hey, learn about this like computer architecture. And I was like, yeah, I know all of the stuff I want to know. I'm only gonna learn the boring stuff, so like I'm not gonna do that. And so yeah, I picked electrical engineering also out of like the wanting like to do something difficult and regretted it pretty quickly. When I just started university, I kicked off my first real startup project. So that was like in 2018, late 2018. Um, I I got together with a friend from my hometown, Toby Heller is his name, and we got introduced by a mutual friend, and he came to me with a bit of a dumber idea. Like, but we thought at the time it's cool. We wanted to build like an app where you could battle yourself in who drinks the most water. Totally, totally fucking stupid. But I also thought like, oh, it's a cool idea. And, I started working on that. That of course didn't go anywhere. But we kind of noticed like, hey, this might be a cool fit to work together. And then Toby at that time was into weekly planning a lot and like productivity, and I wasn't back then. So he introduced me to all of that, and yeah, he was working on a physical weekly planner, and so we thought like, hey, how about we take this physical planning strategy and basically mold it into a product. And so there, the idea for D Plan was born, which was like my first SaaS company that we wanted to build. And we spent around like a half a year to 9 months on that. Was like very fledgling work, very ineffective in what we did. But I basically cut my teeth there a bit on like what's actually required to build a software there. We also pitched to a couple of bigger companies like Kantar and like try to like A, build it for ourselves, but also B, build it for corporate. So I feel like the sense of like wanting to build something in B2B was always there. I wasn't really into consumer that much. And yeah, pitched a couple of people, um, and basically earned money freelancing and then spent it on my startup ideas, right? And that was like the theme for the past 5 years, I would say. So any money I made basically went to fueling or like funding my own like scalable ideas or like trying to climb the entrepreneurial ladder. And that wasn't something that was like incepted into me. Like back then I had like a really weak network, I would say. So like for the first 3 years in my entrepreneurial career, had very little resources, very little guidance, but I just knew like, hey, I want to build a startup. And that's also like a trait that I'm glad I had. I was like so overly naive in thinking that things will be so easy and I will make just easy money, obviously, right? Raising money, and building a venture-backed startup. It's like, you'd have to be an idiot not to try that, right? But yeah, things took longer than expected. And so I went through that project, still studying electrical engineering, and it's been kind of like a juggling balancing act because I was balancing my time between studying, which was it's basically a full-time job if you do electrical engineering, freelancing, and then also building this new startup idea and actually spending money on it. So like we actually hired developers for this, which was kind of local. And I had a really terrible, I think, like mm, first mid-semester or something because I was running out of cash. My first employer didn't need any work anymore, and I was doing something so specific and niche that it wouldn't like translate easily, and like I didn't get any referrals. So I basically had this expensive flat in Munich, had expenses for the company, and I basically dipped to zero with my bank account while I was in exam phase. And
And
I
there's
had to borrow
legit
money
there's like no second net, right? There's like no one, nothing really.
yeah, back then, like a little bit. So back then, my dad could lend me like a couple thousand euros, but he was also like very like there wasn't a lot of net.
Yeah.
So if it weren't for him, like that would have maybe already been GG back then. But yeah, I could borrow like I think 5,000 euros or something from him, and then hustled my ass off to get contracts in, and that was basically my journey into e-commerce. So like Toby was at the time that we were running this D-Plan
How did you get to know
startup,
this Toby dude, by the way?
through a mutual friend. So a mutual friend that went to the same school, and actually they organized raves in Nuremberg. And I went to a rave of theirs when I was like 14 years old or 15 or something. And and that it was like very innocent, all very innocent. It was like out in like open air raves. And Toby's also a very well behaved guy, so like not your Berlin party maniac. And so yeah, we met through a mutual friend. His name is Basti Bretting. And yeah, he introduced us back then.
Got it. Okay, just wanted this background, and then you went onto your ecom journey.
Exactly, and that kicked off the ecom journey, which was like 2019 roughly. So Toby started after being in Miami and being inspired there for half a year. He was visiting his girlfriend. He started Palm Suit, which is an e-commerce brand still around today. Yeah, really, really great at branding. Like Toby's great at marketing, branding, all these things. And he made some friends at Shopify meetups, I think, in Nuremberg. And that was his first entrepreneurial network. And I unfortunately was in Munich back then, but I still like at least sometimes um, talked with them, like very rarely back then. Like looking back, I would have loved to like have an entrepreneurial network. I was like solo playing for the first like 3 years of doing anything entrepreneurial, basically. So yeah, I luckily they needed some marketing integrations built, and so I basically started a freelancing journey in e-commerce. And that was like the first somewhat sustainable client base that I developed. And yeah, it was like in the Shopify ecosystem a lot. And so that was basically up until last year, that was like my most reliable money making engine, besides like sometimes doing web design. Um, so yeah, that was basically now the freelance engine. And then looking at them, of course, in e-commerce, like I was still studying, and then um, yeah, it's actually like it's not as easy to tell it linearly because like my whole journey has been through a lot of overlaps. So I was basically phasing out of that first B2B SaaS startup, D-Plan, the productivity software. We decided to like cancel it, to like stop doing it because Toby was also busy with his new e-com brand. And then I met a guy, called Darmas, who yeah was at a creative agency total extrovert. If you saw him once in your life, like you will probably remember him for the rest of your life. Super nice guy and like really lovable. And we got introduced by a friend who's also a podcaster, Fabian Tausch, whom you know. And he introduced us back then because Damas was looking for a co-founder. And so I felt like this was a good opportunity to learn from somebody more senior, also somebody who had different skills than I did, right? Like I was a programmer back then, still like pretty introverted, not a lot of network. And Dharma's was like bling bling advertising agency and like, yeah, pitched me also really, really well on the idea. And so I decided to work with him then. And, yeah, the idea was basically building a LinkedIn for DJs. So Dharmas was a DJ back then, and he pitched me on that, and I was a lot into like music, going out, and so I was like, yeah, this is cool. I never earned any money with it, and we did that all the way up to COVID. So the hard stop for that was COVID because like event scene is dead, right? And then money making engine was running somewhat. I noticed that studying is getting harder and like less and less important because I'm noticing all these entrepreneurial possibilities. And yeah, having worked for all these people in e-commerce, I basically saw them, I don't know, turn 5,000 euros of ad spend and goods, merchandise into 30,000 or something, right? And so for the first time, I was thinking like, hey, why would I get paid 1,000 euros to build their marketing funnel to have them make 100 grand per month, right? And that was also a naive view. So I thought, okay, building it as most engineers do, building is the important part. But I noticed later, like, no, actually, all of the little fine tuning marketing stuff is the important part, and the other stuff is just the execution. Anyways, led me to think like, hey, if these guys can do it, I can also do it. And I wanted to build an e-commerce brand. So, totally different game, totally different game. Haven't been in marketing before. I just sold myself a little bit maybe and looked at what they were doing. And I saved up around like 30K, at that point. So I was like a very, rich student back then, had a very good life. And I decided to YOLO it all into these baby carriers, right? So
Did you
I
drive the
spent,
Bentley or the BMW until then?
no, and the BMW never came.
Uh,
Unfortunately, because like having that as fixed cost would have been even more constraining. So the only thing I ever spent on was like food, just like conveniences in a way. So like I was a big on eating out, not cooking myself. Um, and anyways, took my money into Kokosi, a baby carrier brand, and this was something where I brought on a designer whom Darmus connected me to, actually two designers, one fashion designer and his her boyfriend, like an architect, and they helped me design this baby carrier because like we didn't just want to create, like we didn't just want to copy something, we wanted to build something new there, right? And I felt like if I'm doing that, I'm gonna have a more defensible product. And I basically landed on the product category in e-commerce. So, like the thought process was like, okay, I want to do e-commerce. What's something that is more unconventional, right? And so I was thinking, okay, an industry that I'm not exposed to, or like these young e-commerce chat types, I don't know, marketing bros, is babies, basically, right? So baby carriers was like a products like easy to ship, all of these things. It was kind of like a spreadsheet Excel company founding,
hmm.
right? And so I went into that market, had to like source the fabrics, was like a 9 month process of like putting it all together, getting it tested and stuff. So I brought this product to market with the help of Laura, the designer, and her boyfriend, and thought that would be the Goliath task, right? And now I can finally make money, pay myself a salary, and like accelerate up, right? And brought it to market, and we sold profitably in the first couple of weeks, which was great. And I thought, okay, I'll just turn up the ad spend and I make
And
money,
how
right?
old were
So
you? How old were you at that time?
20, 20, I
20.
think, or
And
19 years old or 20 or something.
and did
Yeah.
you already drop out?
Not yet, not yet. So I believe just when I was about starting to sell the baby carriers in 2020, I decided to say, okay, fuck it. I'm not gonna, university isn't for me anymore. And that was also like a somewhat big decision back then, because back then I didn't have a lot of entrepreneurial friends, right? So all of the people in my circle were saying me, are you out of your mind, right? What are you doing? But I decided to go do that. And my bank account was like at an all-time low because I had all this money. Invested it all into the carriers. I paid myself a salary. I didn't do any freelance contracts to focus, like one thing, fully focus on this thing for the first time. And then I thought, okay, now I can finally pay myself a salary now that this is selling. And then comes a competitor that, yeah, sent a cease and desist basically. So yeah, we got sued. And I was like, okay, what's this? I wasn't that panicked at first because I knew like we were building something new, right? And we were not infringing on anybody's trade dress in a way. And so I gave it to a friend of mine who's a lawyer and had this evaluated. And he was also like, "Yeah, I'm very bullish. We can get this over with, dealt with, right?" So I was annoyed at the fact that I had to do all this paperwork now, which was like I had a flashback from creative writing in high school, right? So I had to write like a 20-page document to like preemptively not get sued by them. And then once we got sued by them, I had to write another like 25-page document lining out like everything of like why our thing is not copying them and why we are basically, if you take the baby carrier market, there's like a congregation here and we're like here, right? So like we actually innovated on something in like the strap system, whatever. Laura did that, right? So I was actually feeling super bullish to win this, right? And yeah, the court hearing happened on March 17th, I think, 2021. And my lawyer told me not to come myself because like you just get asked a bunch of questions and like that's how these things go, is what he said. And then he called me back and was like, yeah, finally, sigh of relief. Gonna put a check mark behind this, right? We're obviously gonna win. And he calls me like, yeah, we might have to do like a deal with them. I was like, wait, what do you mean a deal with them? What happened? And he told me that the judge did not have or like 25-page document that you need to understand the case, right? But he read the full pamphlet of the other party because his assistant apparently didn't print it out. I was like, what do you mean the assistant didn't print it out? Like, didn't doesn't the session get adjourned or like? And he told me like, no, the judge is gonna take a look over Easter. So it was like Easter around that time. And judge is gonna take a look over that time and then make a decision. I was like, what the fuck? Like my lawyer was in there without any arguments, or like without any reference points. And there was like a bunch of stuff going on. They cut up my carrier, they cut it up and then like arranged it in a way to like put it over theirs and say like, look, this is congruent, right? This is the same shape. What the fuck is this, right? So I was beyond like flabbergasted in disbelief of what happened, and then called with my lawyer. I thought like, hey, we're gonna appeal, right? And he told me like, yeah, Nick, the way this works is you basically have this first court process where you can appeal twice. Then you only go into the main process, which can take up to 3 years. So basically, what I was faced with was um, potentially 3 years of legal trouble, and like that company could easily handle it. I couldn't, right? Um, or throwing in the towel, and like that was a really tough medicine to swallow. Because like I invested all of this time, like 1.5 years in this, and all of this money, and I just felt like this was so unjust, and I was like so shaken, and I thought of like going on the offense and like raising a Kickstarter campaign, like crying out to all the mommies like, hey, this guy like is doing bullshit, right? He even left like a negative review which was fake and stuff. So like all of this stuff, and then I thought like, okay, Nick, you're 21 years old. You're not going to war for baby carriers, which I think was the wise decision. And so,
Did
yeah,
you
I
decide this on
basically,
your own, or did anyone help you in the decision?
It's tough. Talked a lot with my then roommate, Niklas, and also had some major disagreements because he always told me like, dude, just get a job. What the fuck are you doing? Just get a
Uh,
job. So he was like well intentioned for me, right? But it
mm.
didn't help as much. But yeah, I didn't have that much back then still, like didn't have a close group of friends that were entrepreneurial like I did in Berlin now. Like all you know all these people now that we hung out with in Berlin. But yeah, it was a pretty tough time. But I would say so like my bank account dipped from like 0 to negative 10K because the court fees were also like 10,000 euros. And so I was in deep trouble and
And you're not
I could
studying at
borrow
this
like
point anymore, right? So there's literally no
no,
safety net, no education, no
no.
money, just you and your skills
Yeah.
and mind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I had to borrow money again, and luckily my dad's girlfriend could lend me like I think it was 10,000 or something back then, or 8,000 euros. And N26 overdraft, shout out, saved my life a couple times. Um, yeah, and I had to just get my shit together back then. Yeah, back then I even had a working student, so I actually employed two people back then, like not for a lot of money, but I had like two working students. One of them I had to let go, and then one stayed with me, Marvin, which was like a friend from my from like all the way back kindergarten or something. And yeah, we decided, okay, we're now going to pivot fully to agency work. And I had to do a bunch of like very shitty jobs because I had to say yes to everything. And that really also like burned into my mind. Like, you really want to take these contracts and like do work from a position of abundance, not from scarcity. Because like if you're doing it from scarcity and you have to take everything, and you have to agree to like terms you wouldn't agree to, then it's like getting really, really annoying, right? Yeah, I had a bunch of hard projects, and then yeah, I went to a mastermind, met Nico back then, by the way. Went to a mastermind just when this happened, and thought I could tell anybody, everybody at the mastermind, like, hey, I'm scaling this e-commerce brand. There were all e-commerce people there. And then I came to the mastermind saying like, yeah, I just got fucked.
Mm.
I don't have anything to talk about because like everybody was like strategizing and just like generating value for each other. And I was sitting there, I was like, and I had to do all these client meetings and stuff back then. But yeah, anyways, first mastermind was still, very, very nice.
And
And I met a lot of the friends.
very quickly, what's a mastermind and how do you get
Yeah.
in one?
Um, so masterminding comes from Think and Grow Rich. Help me again.
Napoleon Hill.
His name is Napoleon Hill. Yeah, yeah. So masterminding is you get 4 or 5 people or something together in a group, and or like a group of people and discuss ideas and like try to collectively be smarter and solve each other's problems. And what I'm referring to here as a mastermind is kind of like a workation slash mastermind, which means basically like a company offsite strategy session, but for entrepreneurs. And you spar with each other, and it's like some are more formal and have agendas, some do not, right? Yeah, so Nico organized this, which I was very grateful for, and I met a lot of the Berlin friends that then, yeah, I came to know and love. Anyways, low point here, and the I basically spent the next 6 months being lost in a way, like being really lost in like what I'm gonna do next, because I had all this ambition to build like a software company. Even the e-commerce business was trying basically laying the groundwork, building the capital, making like a small exit to later build software. Right? This was just a means to an end, and I was like, okay, I'm now further away than I've ever been. And what really hurt was that I didn't have a thing to like pour my energy into. So the critical thing wasn't necessarily that I was broke or that I was like on paper like all these bad things happened, but like I didn't have a passion project, like something I could pour my heart into, right? And that really fucked me because like all I had to do was like shitty work for other people, and there was like no vision for an agency, I knew this was just temporary, and like I didn't accept that as much. Like looking back, I might have just, I maybe would have just told myself earlier, just try to find peace in running an agency for a year, and then look what's next. But yeah, I was like frantically
Would you tell
scribbling.
yourself this? Would you tell yourself to stop, go back, and be in peace with the agency for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months?
Um, Probably would have been the more effective thing to do, because like what I was doing back then was uh, scribbling out frantically, like basically falling asleep, startup ideas, and like being in the shower and like having all of these like brain foggy thoughts of like, fuck, what unique insight can I just like force out right now to build a startup? So just like cramped up 6 months. So, I think I'm glad I didn't just end up running an agency, in the classic sense, but saying to myself like, hey, fully embrace that you are now not in a position to build something scalable, right? Or not, don't have the capital, don't have the access, and just accept and lean into and like fool yourself into thinking that building this agency is cool. So I actually had a Notion doc I built for myself once, which I called gamifying building an agency. And I reworded all of the shit I had to do into like basically startup milestones to like Mozart's one, into yeah, brainwash myself. This is like a major point. Yeah.
Which is already a hint towards your super advanced mindset, by the way. This is also tying back to the intro. If someone is listening up until this point, this is like what I mean with you being like such a formative person, because you're already at 23, like have this super advanced mind, which now thinks about gamifying this agency. I totally resonate with this restlessness of like, I need to come up with an idea. By the way, reference back to the episode which will be released in the week in which we'll release your episode too, with like Finn and Emil from Kappa. They actually tell us that they got their prime idea. They had a couple of ideas and they got it from a friend who runs a successful startup already. And they gave them the hypothesis. So like this entire like bottom up ideation, I think there's nothing harder. There's no harder task you can basically give yourself, right? To be like, okay, I will, from my living room or whatever, I will come up with a scalable idea for Airbnb. Yeah. Okay, drive it. So anything, long interruption here. Why? Because I'm currently missing the point on this agency wasn't a flop, right? This was the Shopify agency, right?
So to piece it together, actually, I think no. So what happened basically was I was running so many experiments all the time that I sometimes get confused what I did myself. I did a various work. I didn't specialize back then, and that would also be like advice I would give myself now, to specialize earlier and just accept that, hey, you're not in this for the fun, right? You're building something scalable. You're going to delegate it, whatever. So I did various projects, and then still did like startup ideas on the side. Like I could go into those, but it's just been like, I would say like five other small projects that I did. And then, over the turn of the year, I wanted to build a conversion optimization agency. So like I landed on that because I felt like this is a better way to decouple my time invested per hour from the money I earn, right? Like you can, depending on like how big of a company you attach yourself to, if you improve the conversion rate of Apple by 1%, you're fucking fabulously rich, right? Um, Compared to like just doing software work where you get billed by the hour almost. So that's what I wanted to do. Got more into marketing over that time. But also noticed this isn't for me. So like I worked with a couple of cool clients like pkw.de, it's like an auto trading site. And then at the beginning of 2022, I said, okay, Nick, let's just build this agency now. Let's cash flow this. Let's also think about getting employees in there. And what was also very pivotal in like leveling up my learnings is the environment. So I think like above all, and this also led me to moving to SF now. was the environment. And so I decided to move from Munich to Berlin, and go into that entrepreneurial network where I had a couple of friends. So yeah, arrived there in February 2022.
So
And then,
just to
yeah,
get in here very quickly. So you are running this agency with your friend, right?
yeah. So I was running this agency with like him potentially being a partner, but then at some point we noticed like he wouldn't like to do that as long, and so we split ways mid 2021.
So
So yeah,
you're making money with this agency. You're not specializing. You're deciding to split. You're out of your studies, and then
yeah,
somehow you're like, okay, I want to focus now. I have to focus, and I want to focus. And then you decide to move to Berlin.
yeah, exactly. So I noticed that my life, like my focus and like that wise Zen 17-year-old that I was once, I kind of lost touch with him, and I spent the entire year of 2021, if I would give it a title, was like would be like pain plus reflection equals progress, right? So like just a bunch of reflections started my reflection habit and routine then basically, and I tried to find out like what the fuck did I do in 2017 that led to me leading a happy life, right, and being successful. And so I reverse engineered that a bit and like reminded myself of being that person, and started doing cold showers, read a bunch of books, and like really pushed myself to then move to Berlin, become a better person, right? And so
What was
I would
it?
say I started my,
What was this essence? Like,
yeah,
what was the magic recipe?
what was the magic recipe? I would say it's actually living by principles, but not consciously back then. So it was leading a disciplined life, having consistency in my habits, right? Like doing things that are uncomfortable. Yeah, just being disciplined all in all, and like going into that positive feedback loop of building discipline, being able to do more hard things, getting rewarded for these hard things, and like shifting your dopamine system from consumption to production in a way, and to yeah, being comfortable and happy with doing hard things. So like back then, yeah, I did this SAT training and like wrote like C++ code like for 5 hours, and was like a nightmare debugging basically. But I was cool with it because like I didn't expose myself to as much stimulus. So I think those are like some of the things that I'm now incorporating again and that I had back then. Meditation, like all these things. Yeah.
So you're moving to Berlin. You're like, one thing.
Yeah.
You have to go
One
back,
thing.
more
Yeah.
or less. You have to get back into your system. You go there, and then you start the Shopify agency.
Exactly. So I was freelancing back then, and I was charging more and more for my services, and then I figured, hey, gonna bring on other freelancers, and I would say that was my first peek into um, proper entrepreneurship, as in building a company and getting in employees and like actually negotiating contracts, budgeting properly, and it was like really yeah, learning the ropes of that more, of like what does it mean to build an agency, because like the previous working student was like a undefined role. I don't fucking know, right? It's like more of an experiment. So brought on these people, and like at the peak had like 5 people working with me, a bunch of partners that I worked with, and yeah, built Shopify stores for like very like great direct to consumer startups like Holy Energy, which now raised a bunch of money. I think they raised like 10 million or something. Great, like amazing founders, amazing people. And so, yeah, I was working with them, and the agency basically then turned all the way up to like, I think 350K run rate, for like 2, 3 months, until, as was a repeating pattern, I decided to cut off my own leg again, and say like, "Hey, I'm gonna do something else now." So you of course know what I'm referring to here. Um, I still had the bug of wanting to build a software company, right? And I was sparring with my friends in Berlin there. Uh, Decided, like almost decided to jump on an opportunity to become CTO of a company in the green energy space in April 2022. And that really instilled confidence again. Because like it's been 2 years by then where I seriously thought of building a software company. And I thought, okay, maybe it's already time to go back. And so friends of mine told me about this amazing program called Entrepreneur First, um, uh, which I then signed up for in June, got accepted. And yeah, I was really excited about that back at the time because I knew I was going to meet amazing people I wouldn't have access to. I was actually pretty excited to step back into like this venture, like this thinking big world, the software world, right? So agency and e-commerce are all great, like lifestyle cash flow businesses, and there's like great entrepreneurs being made there. But I think especially for my character and like for my genius zone, I'm not sure if you mentioned that already on the podcast, no, but like for my character, entrepreneur first was the move, right? And so yeah,
Man, quick
yeah.
question here. Like, let's take this entire period from when you're 17 to basically now making this decision to go to EF.
Hmm.
What's your source of inspiration? Because like to cut off a business which makes like 350K a year, you lead it and you have 5 employees, so you basically have the profits for yourself. Coming from a situation where you don't have anything, or of course you have something, you have a great family, however, like financially, you didn't have a safety net, or you didn't have a bachelor's degree or master's degree or whatever. Like, what inspiration do you have to have? What like, or was it your characteristics of like being naive, as you put it? Like, what inspired you to take these leaps to cut off this business where like 99% of the people would be like, man, they would sell their parents for having a business like this.
Um, I think I think what it comes down to is like just curiosity, wanting to find things out and like being uh feeling like I've gotten the gist of something and I want to move on to the next thing pretty quickly. So like I felt like okay, I know I can build an agency in some way. Like I have to say like my agency wasn't like the most wildly successful, like crazy money printer ever. It was going in a very good direction and it had some very good months. So could have definitely went on with that. But I felt like, hey, I know this is on the table. This is not going to run away, right? So maybe the market dynamics change a bit, but yeah. And like one mental model that I use a lot is regret minimization. So like if I look back, if when I'm dying at some point, or like if I look back, I don't know, in 10 years, and I think to myself, like, what would I regret more? Having made, I don't know, this bunch of money, like scaling the agency to 30 people and like doing something, or like saying fuck it and like going to this like portal that we call EF, right? Diving right in and then seeing what happens, right? So and especially like being able to work on something that that's like way more intriguing to me. Like I'm not sure like how much I shared of this background, but like I was a bit sad to like leave my studies because I actually wanted to figure out all of these things, right? Like I wanted to learn these things in electrical engineering, and I like being like around scientists and stuff. And I thought like, wow, oh my god, there's like biotech people and like physicists in EF. Like I have to go there. Like I have to go and find that out. And yeah, I would say like regret minimization is like a big yeah a big razor for me where I'm like and I feel like especially this also shapes your character because if you make the decision to stay put now, you're very likely to make the next decision like that also. But the same is true in a different direction, right? Like if you make a bold decision, that's just who you become. You become a bold person, right? So yeah, and the thing is like the dots connect in hindsight, right? So at the time, I also was like, am I a bit loco here? My friends were also telling me like, yeah, this sounds cool, but like, especially after EF, when I did not raise a bunch of money, but decided to go back into the pool, um, people were telling me like, you had this thing going. What the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with you that you that you decided to stop? So yeah, but those were like my motivations, I think. Yeah.
I have an interesting question here. Before
Mhm.
we get into this rambling, how did EF find you?
EF found me through Dominic. Dominic is a friend of a friend, basically, that I randomly met on a walk, basically. And my other friend just so happened to say like, hey Nick, share your frustrations or stuff. Like I confided in her like privately, like all of this shit that's going on in my head. And I was like thinking, yeah, like I'm running this agency, but I really want to do something bigger, and like I'm not sure what to do here. And she just told me like, yeah, tell him about this. And I was like, I just met the guy. I'm not sure I want to bore him with like all of my life's worries, but I decided to do so anyways. And he was like, dude, have you ever heard of EF? Like that's a great program. And I haven't heard of it ever before. I also didn't know Antler. So like I wasn't too much in the whole like startup accelerator space. Like I knew Y Combinator, but I felt like that was such a stretch, and so far out. Um, but yeah, that's how I heard of them. And I decided to I looked at I decided to apply, and I actually didn't take it that seriously. So like at the time, to that context, I was on the Y Combinator like co-founder matching platform, which is kind of like a Tinder for co-founders. And I met a couple of people that actually also applied there, and so my perception of EF at first was like that it's not even that great. So like they accepted me, and I was thinking like, yeah, do I even want to do this? And then I watched like some of the talks, like some of the pitches that their founders had, and I think I was like just about getting accepted, like at the last stage. And I watched these talks and I was like, okay, no way I'm getting in. There's like no way, these people are way too smart. It's like, wow, what the fuck? And so I only later, like I just like whipped out the application, didn't think of it. And then only when I had the interview, I was like, oh fuck, I really want to do this, I think. And yeah, I'm glad I got in, and that kicked off basically. I got the notice in June, and then I knew, okay, fuck, I need to roll all of this off. So, my strongest months in the agency were like July and August, and September was basically when the program was starting. So I knew like, okay, Nick, you're gonna be out in La La Land for another year probably after that. So I knew I needed to build runway, and so I worked my ass off during the summer to make all that revenue basically. And it was good I did that, because like it turned out that I was going to cruise a bit longer on the on the runway that I made. Yeah.
And this story is incredible. Like literally from year after year, you take one harder decision after another. It's not only financially, but it's also socially, like the environments which you change. So from Munich and this degree and your environment there, you drop out of the degree, then you are basically on your own, then you build this stuff, doesn't work, then you move from Munich to Berlin, then you like build a friend circle of agency people in Berlin. Then you're like, cool, you're even quite success, or not quite, you're successful in there. And then you cut away those people. Like, of course, you don't like say, fuck you, and I never want to see you again. But you're like, okay, cool, I think I've understood this world. Let's cut it again and let's go into EF, which is like this, again, totally new portal, as we call it.
Mm. Yeah, man, EF was amazing. Like I spent 2 weeks and went to Portugal before that, and like really reflected deeply on like what I wanted to found or what I wouldn't want to found. And I figured out that if I'm gonna raise money, and I had a worse perception, I think, of raising money back then. I thought you were gonna like put on handcuffs and be like dragged off to like 8 years in founder prison, right? If you decided to build the wrong thing. And I learned it isn't that bad actually. But I thought, okay, if I'm gonna do that, I want to do something stupidly ambitious and crazy, right? And so the first thing I did was like chat up all the biotech people, like all these like synthetic biology, we're engineering organisms, like completely local field. I have no background at all in, right? None at all. And I decided I'm gonna build software for these people. I'm gonna build like the genome compiler, editor, whatever thing. I'm gonna build it as beautiful as Notion is, because I saw all of their archaic tooling, and so I I basically dove in there and went straight for these people. Talked with every single one before EF kicked off. Even I went out to like conferences. I DM'd the entirety of biotech Twitter basically, and I went into this field where I knew nobody, and pretty quickly was talking to like some serious people there. So that's just for you like the what like excitement can do. And I think that was like the most like viciously effective time I spent. I was like on fire. I was completely on fire there. I was like at the peak of my ability because I was just that excited, right? Um, and I found somebody who was crazy enough to be my co-founder during that time in EF. His name is Alex Stautel, great machine learning engineer, a lovely person, and we interviewed like 60 people in biotech, 60 in 2 weeks, which is totally insane. Like I'm not sure how we did that, but the people there to their point are like very open, sharing, whatever, right? And so I went on this adventure. I thought like, okay, my friends were thinking like, what kind of psychosis does Nick have right now? Because like it's been whenever you met Nick and you asked him like, what are you doing? It's like above 80% chance it's going to be something wildly different, right? And so yeah, biotech was probably the peak local for me. Um, but I'm very glad I did that. I'm very glad, and I learned a lot. I met great people. In the end, decided that might not be the right path, especially like the healthcare industry is very works very differently. It's not about differentiating in product as much. It's more like very old guard hierarchies and stuff. And so knowing me, like this is not my environment. So yeah, this was the biotech period, and then I worked with two more co-founders. Um, Looked at some ideas in e-commerce, but all in all, felt like okay, these ideas are good, but they're not worth like strapping myself to a rocket now, right? And so at that point, I had this. I was on Twitter because of biotech, because all these people are on there, and then I discovered this community called Indie Hackers, which is basically independent developers who take on the challenge of building a software business, a software product, all on their own, or like in a very small team, bootstrapped, which was something I didn't see before. And where I thought, okay, if you want to build a software business, you have to raise venture funding, right? Somehow that paradigm was like etched into my mind, and I was like mind blown to see those people, and I was like eagerly discovering what they did on Twitter, and I thought like, wow, Nick, you were made for this, right? You hate authorities. You hate other like no, I don't hate collaborating with people. That's not right. But like I'm comfortable doing stuff on my own also, and I don't have team experience, right? So it's like you have to be in the intersection of development, marketing. You have to be scrappy, fast. All of these things I
Perfect.
like doing, and so I thought, yeah, this is just
Perfect.
perfect. Um,
How
yeah,
did
how do you
you,
want to
maybe
pace, by the
just
way?
one question, because I think this layer would give us lots of value here. How do you regulate yourself emotionally, socially? Like what's happening psychologically in this time in Berlin? Because like EF is like, man, like we sometimes jokingly said it's like running barefoot through hell, right? Like the people are like, oh, you have to found with this guy, or like you have to break up because of this and that, and then you're like building sometimes in areas in which you would never probably found a company or something. So it can feel a bit like off. until you basically see who you actually are and where you go. I mean, for this, it's amazing, right? To just figure out, okay, who to collaborate with, who not, maybe doing something on your own, figure out markets, etc. But it's a very shaky time. And so you basically
Mhm.
just left all of those circles. So that, again, you're on your own. You know that you're burning your money now. Like, is regulation, self-regulation actually a topic? Or were you like, nah, I don't care. Like, I have my routines. I'm in my 2017 prime state.
You pump iron, you eat healthy. No, I think I'm okay with extremes also. But I do have to say like EF was also a bit psychotic on some days. So, you do neglect like your friendships and stuff. And that's also a key learning for me to like keep a certain layer of like being social and being around people. Um, cause yeah, you're in this for the long game. Like you don't have to like compress out every single bit. Anyways, that being said, like what do I do to keep myself sane? I
What did you
read a
do?
lot.
What did you do in this phase?
Yeah, what I did to keep myself sane, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So yeah, like workouts, then reading, going to bed early, meditating in the morning. Um, I was reflecting. Yeah, I would say probably reflecting and trying to make sense of all of these rapid changes is one of the key habits. I didn't have that much structure back then, but I basically used to create like whenever something bothered me or whenever I had a big problem to like think about or in front of me, I would just like journal out, right? And journaling really helps for me to think clearly and like to keep somewhat of a sane mind. But that being said, I also let myself like fall into this block of insanity. I do have to say, like yeah, probably most of my time I spent in the last 5 years, I was thinking, okay, I now just have to prove myself and really hunker down for these 2 months, and then it's gonna be easier, right? And I kept telling my family that. I kept telling everybody that, right? All my friends was like, "Yeah, I can't see you right now because like this is like really important." And yeah, it's basically been like that a lot of the time. So um, yeah, but it worked out okay. It worked out okay. I wouldn't say like anything bad happened, but it's something, it's like callousing that you build, right? Like if you've, I wouldn't say you have to go through like all of this stress all at once. Like if you're just starting out, it's something that you build, right? And like now my co-founder, Steven, I talked with him, also a lot about this. I think he's more calloused. He's been through even like much more like ups and downs and like roller coasters and incidents and whatever. And you just develop like a callousing, right? And like a resistance to that. And you're a more calm being, I think, going through this. This is also why entrepreneurship is beautiful because you learn a lot about handling other things as well because it's so extreme. Probably extreme sports also have the same.
And Nick, to being a bit conscious of time, like what happens after EF? Like when are you like Christmas approaches at EF at some point? You're like 3 months in,
Yeah.
3 months after such a or in such an odyssey or such a strenuous program, feel like eternity, right? So like Christmas is coming, you're probably driving home. What goes through your head and what do you do afterwards?
So while I was on my psychotic biotech episode in EF, I said, fuck it, I'm going to America now and I'm going to people in person. So in November, I think, I just booked flights to San Francisco, like flight to San Francisco and then back from Boston. So the plan was like spend 2 weeks in SF, meet all the biotech people, spend 2 weeks in Boston. And I was even thinking about getting a job in biotech because like I wanted to go there really badly. And to explain that, in one sentence, if you tell a programmer you can soon program cells, like you can program like a living thing that just does shit in the real world, like that's pretty amazing. Not exactly the case, but that's what I thought basically. So booked these flights, and so I knew I was going to the US, but I didn't know what the agenda would be. So I took some days to wind down over Christmas, but I still hadn't made the choice. Do I go all in biotech? Do I start like an indie development career basically, and like build these own little micro apps. And so I went home for Christmas. I broke my pinky, and so that led to me spending New Year's Eve not partying, but like sitting at home reflecting. And so this is actually deeper again. When I was in the program, I wanted to interview Nico, who also mentored me now in the time afterwards, and Nico told me to go write a eulogy, right? So basically, eulogy is when you die, the oration that is being read about who died there, right? And so that was not what I wanted to hear, but it somehow stuck with me. And yeah, at like right on New Year's Eve, I was with friends until 10 p.m. They went out clubbing, and so I went home by myself and I wrote my eulogy at like midnight. And like I really gave me this film, you would say in German, this movie, and brainwashed myself, right? Brainwashed myself so hard. And like yeah, my little sister has like a little yeah, she basically has an illness. It's not terminal, but it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty impairing. And I said I want to take accountability and like ownership of that, and about making it better. And like I really built like this persona of myself and told myself like, dude, you are the one that's gonna go out and go get it for the family. You're gonna save her, right? You're gonna make sure she's gonna have kids. And so like I really, really brainwashed myself at midnight and said, okay, you're going to the US, you're gonna go as hard as you can. Listen to things like David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. It's like a book. I can really recommend it if you want to go be a hardo. But yeah, I really leaned into that. And so I took off to the US then. And yeah, arrived in San Francisco. It was raining. It was like, it wasn't like the most fun experience, I would say, in the US, but I reflected a fuck ton, and I went out to these like iconic places for myself. I went to the Computer History Museum in like San Francisco, in the Bay Area. I went to the Google HQ. I went to Stanford. I sat in on a lecture and like really wanted to take it in and like think about, okay, I want my kids to be here, right? And or like I would have wanted to be here. And yeah, I would say like the entire time I spent in the US was like brainwashing myself, especially like the first month. And then yeah, I actually decided I was not gonna do biotech by
So
like
you
half of my stay.
so you had
Yeah.
already split up with Alex back then. So you split up with the
Yeah.
co-founder for personal
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
reasons, probably, like not for market reasons, apparently.
No, no, it was market reasons inside of EF, because we said like, hey, we only have this EF opportunity right now, and if we decide to do biotech, we can also come back to it afterwards. And
Hmm.
if one of us finds something more sensible here, then it's also fine. So we only worked together for a month, and then we both explored something different. So I explored something in e-commerce, like an ERP, new ERP system or something. I needed something else. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you're in SF, and then you're deciding to break up with biohacking.
Yeah, exactly. So I met the one guy that was like most influential and inspiring, and had a really deep conversation with him of like what he thinks my shot at this would be, and like what opportunity is there. And I noticed like, hey, there's not as much opportunity for a person like me there. And that's when I decided, hey, I'm gonna cancel my stay in Boston, flew out to LA, spent some time there, and then yeah, another pivotal thing happened. Yeah.
You know what's
But
crazy
yeah,
here?
you wanted to say something?
Hey, you know what's
What?
crazy? It's like, and I'm just being reminded of this. I think EF made you, or not only EF kind of like accelerated this, like this radical making or breaking of assumptions, right? So you like after a couple of weeks in biotech, you meet a top influential person in SF. That's impressive. That's super impressive. And then you have a convo with this person and you try to understand basically, is it a thing I'm doing or not? Yeah. I just wanted to highlight this because it's also also for
Yeah.
us, once we re-listen to this, right? This emphasis on radical action, radical action. This is actually also one thing which Finn and Emil mention about YC and Kappa.
Interesting. Yeah, I have to listen to their episode. Yeah, I would say EF was amazing schooling. It was really amazing schooling. In all regards, in regards to how you validate ideas, how you work together, how you assess a co-founder relationship. Maybe they broke us up a bit too early, but like I would say the education was phenomenal, and especially like etching into your brain. You want to kill the risky assumption. You don't want to validate all the things that are probably true. You want to kill the one thing, or you want to kill the idea as fast as possible, basically, which is counterintuitive in a way. And so I did that with biotech. I gave myself an ultimatum. I said like, hey, either I'm going all in and I go get a job or do whatever is necessary, or I kill this, right? And I decided to kill it. And then, yeah, so basically, with that little biotech episode out of the way, I got back into AI, something that I've been looking at like for the past, I don't know, 3 years, and then very closely ever since GPT came out. Not Chat GPT, but like GPT-3, which is 2 years prior to that. Um, and we like played around in the playground and stuff. And so of course, ChatGPT happened in November before. And so I thought, okay, this is also very, very, very interesting and more symbiotic to what I knew as a programmer, right? And so I decided to like go pull myself into AI and already started working on that like late December, I would say, on some projects. Um, yeah, and then spent time in LA, and wasn't that remarkable. I worked on some things, built like a little AI coach, where you would index somebody's entire transcripts and you could ask him any question and he would reply with the knowledge that he had, and like those kind of little like projects. And then I met a very key person now, which is my now co-founder. So I was sitting in a WeWork at 9 p.m. on a Sunday, just being a psycho, and there was another psycho sitting there. So he had a pitch deck open, and I was just asking him like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you building?" And he introduced himself and told me about like his company then, which was something in cybersecurity. It's called Opal, and yeah, he told me that I should definitely go see New York before I fly back. Told him like, yeah, I don't know that many people, and he told me like, yeah, I'm gonna show you around. And then a couple of days later, he texted me, by the way, you can crash at my room, and where I'm like, wow, this is something that wouldn't happen in Germany likely. Like the kindness to strangers and also like the trust in a way. And yeah, then flew out to New York and spent an entire month there, which was also pretty formative. And that was when we started working together, right? So, yeah, I flew over. I asked you, hey, do you know anybody? Anybody cool? And then you said, yeah, but in return, I'm gonna screen share and pull you into the Excel spreadsheet of Doom. And that's where the next psychosis started. So I thought I was just about finished with the venture backed world. I thought I can now finally close this down at peace and build a bootstrap business. And then Krishy comes along and like pulls me back in.
Yeah, so you met Andre, who you will also meet next week, I think, in New York, right? He texted me. Uh,
Yeah, correct.
so I connect you with a couple of friends in New York. I think Andre and Krish. I'm definitely recording. I'm hoping to record an episode with Krish and also texted Andre. Let's see. And
Great people. Yeah.
yeah, so then you meet them in NYC, you hang out there, and we start ideation, right? So I'm like, just to give some
hmm
background here, at this point in time, I'm like, I don't even know, was it February or January?
February, I think.
February.
Yeah. I wasn't in LA until yeah.
Like, I think I misplayed some parts of EF, right? So I brought a co-founder already with me um, to the program, and then who was also non-technical. So I just leaned into the technical people a bit too late. Like we also met very early, and then just had 1 or 2 ideation cycles with technical people. And so by January, February, F is gone. I'm on my own, and I'm still in my old paradigm of like, I need a techie, I need a technical person. If not, I cannot build venture back. Because like for me, it's been less iterative than for you. For me, it's been like I've been in this venture back world the entire time. So I'm like, man, there's one dude in the entire program, or like there were 3 dudes who I really liked, I think, or a couple of maybe even more, whatever. But like 3 techies with whom I really clicked, and like one of them was you. And I thought in the beginning, Nick did e-commerce, so like we probably cannot collab or something because I want to build tech. I don't know. Like great remark here, by the way, to myself. It's like so A, being very careful in first assessments because you're always assessing on your prior experiences and on your limited knowledge. And number 2 is like taking into account learning speed, right? Because like your pace of learning, I think, is insane. And so yeah, anyways, so February I'm there on my own and I'm like, yeah, fuck, like there's legit, maybe there's some hope that Nick is on the market. And so yes, like when you're reaching out, I'm like, this is a sign from heaven, man. That's amazing. I'm like, yo, bro, I'm fully ready. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Because I'm building up this conviction that it's legit just about starting, right? So that's why I've like, once you reach out, I think I'm currently at this moment I'm in Antler. And in Antler, to be fair, I think most of the techies or many of the techies were actually from EF. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, yeah, I guess whatever. Yeah, I thought like Nick is an amazing dude, and then I have all of the spreadsheets ready, and we go into full sales tech ideation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was amazing. I honestly like I learned a lot in at EF, but I felt like I picked up on so much stuff where I was a bit resistant at first of like all of these frameworks. And I was like, yeah, is this really efficient? And like, it's not efficient, but it's effective. We used to joke about this. Yeah, Chris taught me a lot of like great frameworks, which I now also brought to this ideation. So yeah, I think it was a great mutual learning experiences. We started out in venture, and then I think after a month or something of manic depression again, um, I made. I think I told you like, hey, either we're going into something that's like bootstrappable or like not this. I just wanted to like not keep doing this like unicorn hunting that we did, or I'm gonna go out, right? I'm gonna leave or I think I didn't have to put an ultimatum or stuff. I just told you, and you were like, "Yeah, I get what you're saying. Let's try that, right?" But that was at least what I was thinking, right? And so we decided to like pivot a bit to a hybrid strategy. We built like the Frankenstein basically of maybe in the end, like we're gonna be a scalable
Man,
venture
I
product, but at first we start bootstrapped. It was like the most crazy as like connecting the dots, board.
man, like long story short, we spent like 1 or 2 days fully in Miro, probably, or like a couple of remote sessions in Miro, where we still have the recordings, I think. But then once you
Mhm.
were in Berlin, I think then we iterated quite quickly. I don't remember what kind of ultimatum or whether there was an ultimatum, which we said or what.
No, I just felt drained. I just felt drained, with because our idea was invalidated in a bit. And then I felt like I wanted to build an agency, but I knew you didn't want to do that at first. So I felt like, okay, I'm just going to tell you what I want to do now, but I expected you to say, okay, it's no bueno. I want to build venture, right? And then we kind of found a mix, but like in my head, I had this like, either that or like, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
So
I think one thing which solved the knot at some point was like just selling, right?
yeah, totally. Just the
Just
pragmatism, just getting a foot in the door.
man, that's like, and this is where for me at least like the paradigm flipped, right? Like just do something which you can control. Like I'm from this, yeah, just sell, just pick up the phone.
I'm
It's a
from
bit
this
like
university.
Man, it's a bit like Yanis says in one of the episodes also. You probably didn't listen to it yet, right? I
Not
don't
yet.
know
No,
whether
no.
you. But
I'm gonna
Yanis
go
tells
ahead.
this story that he like started at BlackRock sales, like derivative sales or whatever, portfolio management. And there was one hot phone. So like he was very young and it was like his first real job or something. Phone was ringing and Yanis didn't want to pick it up. And then people were like, man, pick it up, pick it up. And Yanis was like, fuck, fuck, fuck. And then of course he picked it up. And then through doing this over and over again, he discovered his like skill and his like ambition in the sales area. Even then went to Fireblocks, Google, Reddit, everything, right? And has become a seller. Like his identity is a tech sales guy. And I assume, at least if I can say this. And I think this is a bit what also happened here. I mean, I've done sales before, but like this moment of like actually selling this and going away from all of these frameworks. Yes, the frameworks are beautiful and stuff, but like what's even more beautiful is when a person says, I'm paying for this. And
Hmm.
so like this was a yeah, learning for me, breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah, and this basically kicked off the journey. I think for you, I feel like we kind of like just synced our worldviews in a bit, right? We were coming like from
Yeah.
two very different points. Like I had this very pragmatic, bottoms up, make money, like build a sustainable whatever small business, and you had this like prestigious, employed, like high roller venture world, right? Like of all these people with like long levers, right?
Yeah.
So that was like a really fascinating thing to combine, and so like I really enjoyed our time there that we had together, like learned a ton, and then yeah, I feel like we ran with this, we experimented a bit, right? You can also feel free to go ahead and like pick up from there the story,
No,
whatever you want to tell.
you can tell the story. It's
Yeah, so basically, yeah, basically we iterated through more versions and we kind of made our way from something venture backed purely to like this Frankenstein productized service. Super complicated. I'm not sure if you know the meme, but there's like the 50 IQ guy, the 150 IQ guy, and then like we were in the in between zone, in the struggling, like fuck, oh my god, we need to build this complicated, like scaled up entry vehicle, and then later, and it's like I don't know, but it was fun. And then we decided to turn pragmatism to the top, and then we decided to just sell a product that I built back in January, February. So we just started cold calling. You started cold calling all of these transcription companies, transcription agencies, and we started plugging this product. And yeah, it was just a great overall time. And I feel like that was probably, yeah, that was then right before our mastermind, right? So this was April then, April 2023. And then we had this pivotal mastermind session that Nico invited me to. And I said like, hey, I'm working with this guy, Chris. He's really amazing. Can I tag him along, right? And so we flew out to Crete um, and spent 10 days there. Chris initially got sick, so I'm not sure you had COVID or something, right? Or like you had
no clue. I was ultra
some
sick, ultra sick.
something bad in your system. I was like, oh fuck, crazy. Okay, he's not coming with me now. Um, but he flew in then 3 days later, and there he got the full injection, I think, of agency people. And I also feel like I learned, uh, I got to know more high level agency people, I guess, or like more hardcore agency people that have been in it for like 5 years or something. Um, and so yeah, that was really exciting. But I would say the key takeaway from all of this time, and I think this is something that you actually can tell better, is the process of working with Nico, and then also I would say, yeah, just deciding that we were gonna not work together directly anymore, but that we're gonna be in like a fighter jet co-pilot, we called it, like just flying on the same altitude next to each other, right? And so I felt like that was the beauty, I would say, of Creed, that and some of the impulses of like belief in yourself, working with systems, and this basically kicked off, yeah, this beautiful journey that came afterwards. So like May 1st, I recall, we went back and we ever since then, we continued to hang out. We saw each other basically all day. We were sparring each other's ideas, and like to this day, I think we basically have a complete download of like what the other person is currently faced with, the challenges. And this was like the most intense, I would say, entrepreneurial sparring that I had with somebody, and also like live sparring, which was just very serendipitous, right? And this is also the idea of a mastermind, then, like a very small one in a way, of like, hey, you put two minds together, not even working on the same problem, but it was almost also like being a so yeah, we had a great time there. Yeah.
Hey, and if we look into your mind now, how you operate, how does it look like? What are your markers? Like, what is your, maybe even what's changed from before the mastermind, after the mastermind, if this has been a crucial point for you, and or
hmm
like maybe the mastermind is even like the when you call it syncing of our worlds, right? Or syncing of the you understanding the VC world a bit better, and then also diving deeper with Steven at some point, and still
hmm
also actually going deeper in the circle of control, which is at least what I associate with the agency and bootstrapping world. Like, how does your, if we assume your mind is a living room, how does this living room look like what kind of books are lying around, what kind of routines do you do, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I love the analogy. So I would say the system that we took with us there was living by your I would say like the things that come naturally to you, and designing a life around those. And then also I would say, and this is very inspired by the book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, which I'm going to touch on in a bit. Um, just accepting that you are the creator, right? That you can shape what you're doing, that you can like listen deeply to yourself and find out like what's actually important to me, and then engineer your system of life around this, right? So like to design basically a game that you're playing, right? And so this is all pretty vague, but um, I would say I I had this sense of intensity and like taking things just very seriously, and like reading literature very deeply and discussing it with you also, and developing this shared understanding of like what we want to do, which was really profound and which I didn't have in that intensity before. So I think I've never done as much reflection and planning as in that time. Um, I recorded, or we both recorded, a check-in video, a couple minutes, and a check-out video every single day for like 3 months or something. And I still do the check-out videos up until now, to this day, where I just do like a little roundup of the day, right? And this just makes you very conscious of what you actually want to do, what's actually important, and yeah, I cannot emphasize the book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey enough. Like that reading that book like basically 3 times now and really internalizing it was very important. And over this time, I built my own set of principles and values, and also discussed them with you, reflected on them, um, remind me. So like my system right now, like I have it is every day I start my day with routines in the morning, like cold shower, all of the stuff. And then I do daily planning. And in my daily planning, one of the first items is um, reading through my principles. And then I take one principle that I focus on each week. So just to give like a sense of what these principles are, these are like be proactive, right? So um, identifying things that that you basically should do in advance, and like uh, going to the other person if there's something you disagree with, planning your week in advance, like all of these things are basically proactivity. One thing, right? Focusing on one thing. That's something you just held the book into the camera, where you're like viciously asking yourself every single day, every single week, like what of this actually matters, and if I can do only one thing each day, like what is it, right, that I'm doing? And so this is basically like a set of principles that I try to inhale, that I reflect on, and that, yeah, it's just been a very good set of guardrails, right? And I feel like people act in a principled way already, oftentimes, but they don't realize it. And for me, what I noticed, like now that I've written them down, I can identify if I'm unhappy about something or if I don't feel good about something, it's maybe because I violated a principle, right? Because I didn't respect a principle. Like I didn't consistently go work out. That's why I'm feeling like sluggish or like more irritated, right? And so you do constrain yourself in a way with this discipline, but discipline also like liberates you in a way. And so I would say this has actually been reconnecting with my 17-year-old wise self, like fully now, that I am, yeah, just taking these things seriously. And it's not like I walk around in my day like being grim and stuff, right? I'm a very, I don't take everything seriously, but just these core things, right? So that's kind of the paradigm, right? I've taken the scenic route here, but that's what I took away.
Has anything changed if you compare your current perception of the lenses with which you look through the world to with which you've looked at the world 1 year ago when EF started? Exactly 1 year ago, by the way.
Mm, I would say I've gained much more self-belief now, just through working with these bright people. So before I thought I was comparatively good at software, for example, compared to these agency people. But then again, I thought this is not the major league of software, right? And so I was always curious, like, can I live up to these people's expectations and standards, right? And being in EF, like, for the first time, like, validated me with people that were, like, truly remarkable. Like, I had the biggest imposter syndrome going in. I was like, wow, like, I just lucked out, right, that I got here. And then over time, you start to notice, like, hey, you see, like, the value you also bring, right, to the table. And so that's definitely been something that, that changed and that I'm glad happened. And besides that, um, I would say even more conviction in doing bold things and like just going, yeah, for example, moving here, just just putting things at stake, risking things, and like yeah, being aggressive with your choices and radical, right?
Nice. Hey, and now doing the full loop. Um, Now doing the full loop. You started out as a hacker. If you haven't put this out there yet, this term. And you're
hmm
now moving into cybersecurity with Steven. Maybe like some
hmm
words on his background, some words on what you're doing, some words on where you envision to be in 6, 12, 36 months.
hmm So yeah, I met Steven in that we work in LA. It was a very serendipitous encounter, and then he phased out of his old company and was visiting me in Berlin, and we decided to go to a work trial, right? And so we wanted to figure out, hey, can we work together? Which is like the most important pillar. And then we looked at, okay, what could we do together? And so at that time, I was building a sales tech software, and we were like kind of thinking of, okay, which direction do we want to go in? But yeah, Steven built Opal before, which is an identity and access management software, and has very deep domain knowledge in cybersecurity. Phenomenal entrepreneur, also great developer. Like he's a amazing, like well-rounded person there. And yeah, it just made sense to me, like to A, reconnect with that, and B, I think I buy a lot of the value prop of like why you would want to build enterprise software, like B2B enterprise software is always something that interested me. And then also why you would like to do a security angle basically. And started like seeing these security products not as being dull or something, but also looking at Steven's product and other and the landscape in general, I noticed like, hey, this is a great category, right? So yeah, we decided to start ideating and looking at vectors in cybersecurity. I can't give away too much right now of what we're doing, unfortunately, but yeah, I can just say that I'm super excited to go on this journey. What we're doing is thinking AI first, basically. So like I've gone like really deep into all of this amazing stuff that's happening with these machines that build the machine now, right? Like the whole paradigm of software engineering is changing right now. The team sizes that you need for certain things, the types of engineers, the types of considerations that you have, all of this is changing. And I think like this is like now, just like the internet, one of the most like times with the greatest opportunity to go build a company, and we have the privilege of building something from scratch now to rethink like a lot of these things. So I would say, where would I like to be in 6 months? I set a new one thing for myself, which I want to re-engineer, but it's like getting to 1 million in ARR ASAP. So yeah, it's very simple. Like I want to build a sustaining business. I want to innovate on the way uh, we ship software, right? I want to build a really killer team. I want to connect with a lot of amazing people here. Last night I just signed up for like, I think 10 AI events or something here, or for the next 2 weeks. Already been to one from Andreessen Horowitz on Wednesday or something, or Thursday. And yeah, just the quality of people here. Like I feel so much conviction in the move of going to San Francisco here, and just being here, trying my best, right, building this company. So yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Man, you've been so formative on how I perceive myself, my skill set, my where I can go, and why. Because you've basically given me a tech injection, like a baby tech injection, of course. Like I still don't write code, etc. I know that you've basically given friends of yours, other friends, a real tech injection who actually like have run their own companies, write their own code, successfully ship it and sell it. But like you've given a baby injection to me, and this is also part, and you've basically shifted my view on this entire future of work now, influenced me on like how my narrative on what I'm building is and what I'm providing basically to the world is influenced. What's your worldview on future of work, and how is like you, for instance, just to give one nugget here already in advance, it's like for a long time you ran around and you were like singularity is just around the corner.
I think that you will have like new roles of building like a new generation of machines, basically. So just how you built, like there were people sewing clothes back then. You then had people who built the sewing machines, and then the machines sewed the clothes, right? And like our economy prospered a lot from that, and the jobs got better and better and better. And I think what will happen now as well is that we will have a new generation of machines to build that then execute on things that are maybe a bit boring for humans, right? So I think the quality of jobs that we will have, and the satisfaction of jobs, and like how much each individual can really do what they want instead of doing just something to earn money, will be amazing. And like I'm not sure like if we're gonna have a long takeoff until like AGI and artificial general intelligence, super intelligence like takes over. Doesn't really matter. But like I'm such an optimist in that our lives will get better, the jobs we're doing will get better. All these poor analysts in finance won't have to do as much shitty Excel copy
Man,
pasting.
this
I don't think it's horrible necessarily. I just think that um, you won't have to do as much shitty work, and
mm,
that accounts for everybody. Because like there's probably lots of things that these people in finance do as well that are amazing and that are fun, and I think they will get to do more of these, right? And so I believe we will just like continue to just elevate our standard of living. I think that cost will come down of like our goods, so I'm like super optimistic that energy price will go down. Like no clue on when and if fusion will happen. Like there's all of these things, but I think we have so many things going on right now that are just make me so bullish on the future. One of those things that I also shared is like, look at China and India. Like they basically came online, and I don't want to be wrong here, but we just had a couple 100 million Europeans and Americans before. Uh, a fraction of them are academic, and you have all of these like hyper disciplined, trained, like Indian, Chinese people that just came online like 10 years ago, 20 years ago or something. Uh, and now they have the internet to like not all work on the same thing. So I think we're gonna solve so many things in like medicine, in energy, computing, that we're just gonna live in a world full of abundance, and it's not gonna be recognizable probably. So yeah, I'm very bullish on the future. I'm very excited because I think we're living in probably the most exciting timeline. Because yeah, I mean we grew up almost pre-internet or pre it being a thing. Like it was just coming along for you. I mean, of course, you're older, but even for me, like I played Legos in my childhood and all these things, and now you have these like frontier AI models and craziness happening. We can engineer cells, like you'll be able to fix like so many illnesses just by like reprogramming the anomalies in your body, right? So yeah, I could just rant on about this, but I think this is the most amazing timeline you can live in. So yeah, so much excitement and like exponential takeoff. Uh,
Maybe, maybe
Accelerate.
let
Yeah.
me bring the classical double T here again, which I'm slowly establishing throughout the podcast. The tangible takeaways. What are the
Mhm.
tangible takeaways for non-techies here?
I think that everybody can be a programmer in a way, and everybody can leverage a machine to help himself do a certain job. So right now is the time to, I think, be curious and like believe in your abilities to go use a computer, go use AI, right? Like have GPT be your little buddy. Like that's also what I told you. You gotta use it every day. You need to use it every day. You need to ask it even stupid questions, so you develop like an understanding for it. And I think that way you will be able to differentiate a lot, right? So like eventually we end up in this serendipitous paradise of abundance, right? But I think right now we still have a couple of years where you can really like distinguish yourself through working with this new tech, right? And so I think that's accessible to everybody. That's even more accessible than ever before. Um, it's not being gated, so go use it, I would say. And then, yeah, let me think. Is there another tangible takeaway on the future of work? Um, feel free to spar this with
I
me,
mean,
because
you're
like I
living
think I
out the
told you a couple
mobility, right?
things.
I always mention the mobility and you're living it out. Like Yanis also, who I interviewed, right? Like he's moving depending on which company offers hybrid remote. He's worked for Tel Aviv, for New York. Like he's just, now he's in Amsterdam, was before in Berlin, there, whatever. Like he's just moving. You're like, you just moved literally like 1 week ago from Berlin to San Francisco. So like the mobility aspect played, at least it doesn't also seem to be a restraining variable in your head. So you're like already living in this paradigm, right? So
I would think that the environment for me has been like such a decisive factor, and I think it's a spectrum of like what you want to do, like how much you want to save your life, how much you want to invest in development in a way. I think you can have both, right? But I think for me, just like moving to a city, to a bigger city, has changed me so much. Like moving from Munich to Berlin unlocked so many like much more textured characters. And I'm not just talking about entrepreneurs and like personal development, right? I'm talking about people who've been like just like such like great friendships, people who are like very spiritual, like all of these things. So I would say, um, yeah, if you haven't lived in a big city, go try it. Like that's been a game changer for me. And other than that, I think yeah, if you're able to work remotely, I would have loved, honestly, I would have loved to go travel around. I already had an itinerary of, I don't know, Buenos Aires and all these things I wanted to go see. So I think there's like a great like the individual and like being able to freelance on your own terms is being like empowered by so much that a lot of people can start these careers, right? Go look up indie hacking if you're technical. There's like so many friends that I now have that are pursuing this path of not building a venture backed company, but like something on their own. And then for the non-technical people, there's like such an abundance of like freelance opportunities, whether that's whether you're doing like ad ops, for example, right? Doesn't sound like the most exciting thing, but there's people configuring an analytics tool, which is something you can literally learn in a 1 month course that make 100 per hour or something, right? You can just go do that. Like it's all accessible, and there's like such a multitude of things to do there. There's like great resources, courses. I believe in coaching a lot, so yeah, I think all of this is up for grabs. If you're right now in a job, you're thinking about like doing something on your own. I think there hasn't been an easier time to go listen to, I don't know, Alex Hormozy, go buy a course on like how to build an agency in XYZ. And of course, like you should go ask around like which ones are actually good. There's like coaches and coaches, right? But I think yeah, we also have it this like in first hand experience. I think Garrett, um, a friend of ours, also is now in like a program, and he's now kicking off also an AI agency, basically with an entirely new skill set. I think that's also an exciting development, right? Like there's a set of skills that no machine learning engineer has, no full stack engineer has, like no like regular programmer has, which is like interacting with this machine, right? Like prompt engineering in a way, but also like just learning the ropes of all of this, consulting there. I think there's like so much opportunity now that's just out there for grabs, and just being a specialist in these new paradigms in AI in your field, whether it's medicine, whether it's HR, whatever. Just I think a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Just one last comment on this here. I think there's plenty of points to hit home. One thing which you've been doing stellarly is identify and build micro communities around whatever is your interest right now. So you're like a pure, although you would never say you're a community builder, I think you are. You're like one of the most real, and like you're just doing it not from the storytelling or whatever angle, or like building scalable communities, but communities to surround yourself in order to level up. So I think you've been doing this insanely good. Hey, all right, Nick. Then let's. I mean, there's been lots of advice. Like I would have just now asked you, what advice would you give your younger self? But I would rather do something else and say, what do you want your older self to tell you in like 10 years? Or what conversation do you want to be able to have with your older self and still look the older Nick in the eye and be like, yo,
Yeah, there's a great saying, or like a great quote I read. There's only two people you need to make proud in your life: your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self, right? So you're like fulfilling the inner child, and then also being able to look back and like have no regrets. So I would say, uh, to me, like since I'm on a path where I like try to push myself a lot, I would tell myself like the journey is the reward, right? Like enjoy the ride, and also like allow yourself to live in the moment. Like maybe be 10% slower or something, but arrive, like feel into things, right? Give relationships more weight. Um, so I think that would be something that I might regret, right? Like if I just rush uh, through these steps, right? That's what I've been doing, kind of. Like all my stops that I had were like very short lived, and I think that's been good in a way. But I hope that I can somewhat at least like enjoy and settle as well. And I think that's like for everybody who's pushing really hard. that's listening, I think that's also something that's great to be reminded about, right?
Hey, but I think this is already a beautiful end. I'm very happy to be able to count you to my close friends. Thank you very much for your 2 hours of your morning over here, and ultra happy to have recorded this. We'll just now check to make sure that it's clean. This is like super. This is amazing.
Yeah, I share this. Yeah. So yeah, super grateful for having you as a friend, and like this has been super fun.
Thanks for listening to Nonlinear. If you like the content, subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. That's at IamKrishi3 as the number, and Krishi with SCHI. Reach out on any of the platforms if you have comments, questions, or just want to chat.